What's going on, everybody? Anthony Servino here from the Face Off Sports Network with my top starts and sits for NFL Week 4 at the running back position. But first, last week, I did go a meager 3-3. I told you to start DeAndre Swift. That was a miss. I told you to start Brian Robinson and Zach Charbonnet. They were both hits. I told you to sit Chuba Hubbard and Devin Singletary, both big misses. And I told you to sit Cowboys running backs, which was a hit. So 3-3. We need to do better this week. And we're going to get right into it right now. And we're going to start with a player we should be starting. And I'm going to go with Zack Moss. And Zack Moss has been pretty damn good this year. 2 out of 3 games, at least 14.1 PPR points, season high 20.7 in Monday night's loss to Washington. Now, Chase Brown did get a season high in touches, and he did play 14 snaps, but Zack Moss was still the dominant force. 17 total touches, respectable total yards, a touchdown. What's even more impressive, 5 to 6 targets for 39 yards as a receiver out of the backfield. In fact, in his 2 most productive weeks in fantasy, he's had at least 4 targets. We all thought Chase Brown was going to be the passing down guy, but it really looks like this is Zack Moss's backfield, and we're going to build off of that big-time outing. And he gets the Carolina Panthers this week, and we know the Carolina Panthers, they're not the best team in the NFL, especially on defense, but especially at defending the run. Carolina this year in 3 games have given up 374 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground, and also 12 receptions for 90 yards to pass-catching runners. Now, they managed to limit the duo of Alexander Mattison and Zamir White. Shocking. But Alexander Mattison did manage 3 receptions for 37 yards, and he also scored a touchdown, 13.4 PPR points. So a very high floor when playing this team. But we know the first 2 weeks, Kamara, Dobbins, they both popped for 20 apiece. Even Jamal Williams in week 1 popped for 12.1. So I'm expecting another big day out of Zack Moss, who right now, rushing touchdown percentage, 6.1%. That's 93rd percentile using the outstanding tools at RotoWire. Let's go to another player we should be starting, and that is going to be Aaron Jones. I'm all in on Aaron Jones this week, and this is another guy. He's playing sensational football. Some people are a little bit worried about Ty Chandler, because Ty Chandler is getting some work. He's getting the snaps, 19, 19, and 22 snap numbers for Chandler. But we have to also realize that these 3 games were fairly controlled by Minnesota. And to me, Tyler Chandler is really a change of pace back, really contingent handcuff upside back. And this is Jones's backfield. And another guy, 3 straight games, the floor, 11.8 PPR points. But in 2 of those games, weeks 1 and weeks 3, 18.9 to season high, 25.8 this past game. In those 2 big-time pop games for Aaron Jones, at least 94 yards on the ground. He ran for $102 last week. He's even catching the football back-to-back games now with at least 6 targets and at least 5 receptions and at least 36 yards. And he's also scored a touchdown in 2 of 3 games played this year. And despite his age and despite the workload, Aaron Jones, super efficient, 96th percentile when it comes to average yards after contact, and that's at a 3.6 yard rate. He's also targeted in the passing game. Sam Darnold has targeted Aaron Jones on 31.8% of routes run. That is 96th percentile amongst running backs. A 2.20 average route per route run. That's 97th percentile by the running backs. And when it comes to percentage of snaps with a touch, 56.3, that is also 90% amongst qualifying running backs. So we're going to fire up Aaron Jones. And what I love about this, we're going to fire up Aaron Jones in a revenge game against his former team, the Green Bay Packers. And Green Bay's defense is another team. They managed to tighten up last week, and they limited Spears and Pollard. of the Tennessee Titans. But the first 2 weeks, they've been gashed by the enemy runner. We know what Saquon did. We know what Jonathan Taylor did. Both of these guys over at least 15 fantasy points, 33 for Saquon in week 1, and both of these guys over 103 yards rushing. And I'm expecting Aaron Jones, who we believe is an upgrade over Tennessee backs. And we believe this offense in Minnesota is real, and it's an upgrade over the offense they're running right now in Tennessee, at least right now until Will Levis gets together. But right now, I believe Aaron Jones, he has big time upside this week. And despite the fact that it looks like Green Bay's offense or Green Bay's defense tightened it up, I'm going to buy into the talent of Aaron Jones, the usage he's getting, and the offense he's currently playing on. Let's go to my last start, and that is the aforementioned Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard coming off a bad game last week, but he should bounce back. Now, let's get into the good of Tony Pollard. Outside of last game where Green Bay limited him, and they limited Tony Pollard because Green Bay blew the doors off Tennessee, led by, Malik Willis in a revenge game of his own. And they kind of the game script took Tony Pollard out of it. Only 9 total touches for 29 yards, but 4 targets. Well, what about those targets? He's had at least 4 targets in 3 straight games and at least 3 receptions and 12 yards in 3 straight games. But in the 2 games to start the year when Tony Pollard was getting a hefty workload, Pollard, at least 15 fantasy points in PPR in those first 2 outings. And as a runner, 16 for 82 with a touchdown in week 1, 17 for 62 on the ground in week 2. So the usage is there for Tony Pollard. He's even getting targeted in the passing game. And he seems to be dominating the snap share with Spears. In week 1, Pollard 38, Spears 27, but it has not been close since. The past 2 games, 41-19, 34-19. So this is Spears' backfield to lose. I told you all offseason when it comes to who we're drafting, because their ADPs were so close, I told you to follow the money. And the money won this time around. And this is another running back like Aaron Jones, highly targeted. Percentage of team targets, 14.6, because Will Levis sometimes has a hard time staying in the pocket and pushing the ball downfield, and there's check down opportunities. That 14.6 percentage of the team targets, that's 91st percentile amongst the qualifying running backs. When it comes to Pollard, when he's in the open field, we know a healthy Tony Pollard, which we really didn't get in Dallas last year, hyper efficient, 20.5% broken tackle rate. That's 86th percentile amongst qualifying backs. I'm in on Tony Pollard, bounce back against. This is a get right game for enemy running backs against the Miami Dolphins. They've been smashed and gashed by the running back position all year, notably in the past 2 games, but at least 12.9 PPR points given up to the RB1 of each team they play, starting with ETN. James Cook, we know, smashed and gashed them. And then Charbonnet last week with no Kenneth Walker, career high 25.7 fantasy points. There are touchdowns to be had, and Miami's not conceding a lot of receptions. They're getting gashed on the ground. They're getting gashed in the red zone. 5 total touchdowns conceded to the running back position. Back-to-back games with Charbonnet and Cook getting at least 2 each. And we know Cook in week 3 had the hat trick. Now we're going to go to my running back sits, and we're going to start with Rachaad White. And I've been telling it all offseason. I've been preaching it. Rachaad White's not a good running back. Excellent receiver out of the backfield. Does not make you a good running back. And I remember I tell the story all the time live on the show. I was looking up comparing backs this offseason, and I had Chuba Hubbard pulled up, and I had Rachaad White pulled up, and I'm like, their efficiency metrics are eerily similar when it comes to true yards per carry over player profiler. And the more you watch Rachaad White, not very good vision. He just doesn't have it as a runner. And if they brought in a competent back, which they did in Bucky Irving, that competent back is going to significantly eat into Rachaad White's workload, especially as a runner. And it's not taking long for it to happen. 3 games into the year, Rachaad White in week 1, sure, he had 16.6 PPR points. He had 6 targets for 75 yards. That was all passing down work because as a runner, 15 for 31. Week 2, 10 for 18 as a runner. Why did he have only 3.3? He had no passing down work. 1 of 1 targets for 5 yards. Week 3, Denver, 8.5 PPR points. Well, 6 for 17 on the ground. And what salvaged the day, 5 of 6 as a receiver for 18 yards. He has yet to score a touchdown despite having 3 carries inside the 5-yard line. He's even had a few targets inside the 10. So there's a big-time concern with Rachaad White. And there are even rumors this week coming out of Tampa that Bucky Irving is going to be the guy. Now, maybe not fully, but he's going to see a little bit more run. And he has earned a larger workload. Now, it is important to note Bucky Irving was limited on Wednesday with a hamstring injury, but there's no signs, at least of yet, that he's going to miss any time, and it looks like he's going to be good to go this week. Now, let's keep in mind here, Rachaad White, 73% of the snaps last week, but he also got 3 fewer carries and 1 fewer touch than Bucky Irving. So Bucky Irving's on the field. They're using him. And oh, by the way, Bucky Irving, when it comes to efficiency, 9 for 70 on the ground last week, 3 for 14 as a receiver. Even in week 1, 9 for 62 on the ground. 2 for 3 as a receiver for 14, completely smashing Rachaad White's efficiency as we expected. In 2 out of 3 games, at least 3 targets. So he's also cutting into Rachaad White's work as a receiver out of the backfield. So this is a big-time fade when it comes to Rachaad White. He gets a tough matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. And I just don't know. Like, this is not a backfield I completely trust. I would rather start Bucky Irving, but I'm certainly fading Rachaad White against the Philadelphia Eagles, who they've been solid against running backs. They have not allowed an enemy rusher to score over 16.2, and the one who had the 16.2, the elite Bijan Robinson, they limited Alvin Kamara to 15.7 and Josh Jacobs in week 1 to 12.4. They have yet to allow a touchdown to the running back position. Let's go to another sit, and that is J.K. Dobbins, one of my guys, but this is another week. I'm not in love with J.K. Dobbins. And reason why, this is a really, really tough matchup, and we saw him get contained by the Pittsburgh Steelers in a tough matchup last week. 15 carries, 18 total touches for 54 total yards, only 8.4 PPR points, did not score. If he scores, he has a respectable day. But he did not. And now you get the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the good thing is that he's beginning to separate himself from Gus Edwards. Now, despite not playing efficient football like we saw the first 2 games, J.K. Dobbins played 29 snaps to 16 for Gus Edwards. So if you are a J.K. Dobbins fantasy manager, you're at least happy about that. You're just not happy that he goes from playing Pittsburgh to Kansas City, 2 of the toughest running back matchups. They're both top 5 in containing enemy rushers. When it comes to efficiency metrics, he's one of the best in the business. 98th percentile average yards after contact at 3.8. 85th percentile rushing touchdown percentage, 4.8. 100% catch rate. I mean, there's a lot of good things here for J.K. Dobbins. The bad, well, you're running into Kansas City a week after you're running into the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I feel J.K. Dobbins is extremely touchdown dependent for him to return fantasy value. So I'm sitting J.K. Dobbins because I just don't know if this Chargers team is good enough, especially we don't know the health of Justin Herbert. If there's no threat of Justin Herbert, there's going to be stacked boxes all over the place by Kansas City. So we are out, or at least I am out, and I suggest you are also out on J.K. Dobbins this week. Let's go to my final sit. This is an easy one, folks. Zamir White. I was wrong, and I'll admit when I'm wrong on Zamir White. This was a bad one. I thought, well, the vacated role of Josh Jacobs is going to Zamir because he looked good down the stretch when Jacobs was hurt. And they brought in Alexander Mattison. We all hate Alexander Mattison. They couldn't wait to get rid of him in Minnesota. Big time plotter. It's all going to Zamir, and it's all not going to Zamir. In fact, the meaningful touches are going to Alexander Mattison. Alexander Mattison has now scored a touchdown in 3 straight games. He has given us at least 13.4 PPR points in 2 of 3 games. Now, he's not totally efficient as a runner, right? Which is why we were out on Alexander Mattison. But as a receiver, he's had 2 games, at least 3 targets, had 6 in week 1, 4 for 43 and a touchdown. 3 targets this past week, 3 for 37 as a receiver. So he's not bad. And he's playing better, at least right now, than Zamir White, who just can't seem to get it going. They're both playing roughly the same amount of snaps, 76 on the year for Zamir, 73 on the year for Alexander Mattison. Now, last week, lopsided. Mattison, 25 snaps to 14. But I think a big reason why is because Oakland or the Raiders, they were getting their butts kicked a little bit. And the passing down guys, Alexander Mattison. So I think in games where the Raiders are in control, we see more Zamir, because in week 2, when they were beating Baltimore, that was a close game. He commanded 39 snaps to 13. So I think both of these guys are going to have their role in this offense, but the fact that they are trusting Alexander Mattison in the money zone, and what's the money zone? The red zone inside the 5, the money zone where you can score, that I can't recommend starting somebody like Zamir White, even in a matchup against Cleveland. Now, on paper, Cleveland looks good. They allowed Devin Singletary to have themselves a game. They allowed Zeke to score in week 1. So I'm not in on this matchup. I'm not in on the player. And we are going to sit Zamir White. I'm Anthony Servino. Remember, if you like this video, tap that like button, hit the subscribe button, the alert icon, so you can be notified anytime we are live to answer your questions or drop content just like this. You can leave a comment if you like my takes, if you don't like my takes, if you like my shirt, if you don't like my shirt, we will always get back to you. We love interacting. But until next time, this is the Face Off Sports Network. Face Off Fanatics. I'm Anthony Servino. We'll see you later.